Jack's shoes crunched against the gravel driveway as he approached the towering iron gates. Beyond them stood the kind of mansion he had only seen in magazines. Marble pillars, glass walls, and gardens so neatly trimmed they looked like paintings. He adjusted the strap of his worn leather bag, feeling the weight of his second-hand textbooks pull on his shoulder. It was just a job, he reminded himself. Just another home tuition session. When the butler opened the door, Jack stepped into a hall so polished it reflected the chandelier's light like a mirror. His eyes were still adjusting when he heard a voice from the top of the curved staircase. "Mr. Jack?" He looked up. A young woman stood there, her hair falling over one shoulder in a soft wave. She wore a pale blue dress, simple yet elegant. "Yes," he said, managing a polite smile. "You must be Jacqueline." She walked down the stairs with quiet grace. "Father said you'll be teaching me physics." "That's right," he replied. They settled in a large study room that smelled faintly of books and polished wood. Jacqueline's gaze was attentive, and her questions carried real curiosity. She listened when Jack explained concepts, smiled when he teased Newton's laws, and often shared bits of her life. Her dislike for rigid family dinners. Her dreams of traveling. Her frustration at being defined only by her father's fortune. "You're different from the other teachers," she said one afternoon, twirling her pen. "How so?" he asked. "You talk to me like I'm me, not Donald Harry's daughter." Jack smiled faintly. "Maybe because I don't care about the Donald Harry's daughter part." From that day, something shifted between them. Their lessons became more than academics. They were conversations, laughter, stolen moments that both knew they shouldn't hold on to. Jack liked her. Maybe more than he should. But every time the thought rose, it was met by the same cold truth. He was poor. He couldn't give her the life she was born into. One rainy afternoon, the door to the study opened mid-lesson. "Jack," a deep voice said. Donald Harry stood in the doorway, tall, silver-haired, and sharply dressed in a tailored suit. His eyes carried the authority of a man used to being obeyed. "Yes, sir?" Jack asked, standing. "May I have a word outside?" Jack followed him into the hallway. Rain tapped against the tall windows as Donald's expression hardened. "My daughter's grades have improved. For that I thank you. But your services will no longer be needed." Jack frowned slightly. "May I ask why?" Donald's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're a good teacher. But Jacqueline is young, impressionable. She enjoys your company more than is appropriate. She will marry into her own circle, not someone like you." The words stung, but Jack held his composure. "I understand." Back in the study, Jacqueline was already on her feet. "You're leaving?" she asked, her voice small. "Yes," Jack said, avoiding her eyes. "Your father thinks it's best." "Do you?" she pressed. He hesitated. "Sometimes what we want isn't what's best for others." Jacqueline's eyes glistened, but she didn't speak. 2 weeks later, Jack read in the newspaper that Jacqueline was engaged to Arjun Malhotra, the heir to another vast fortune. The article called it a perfect alliance. Jack didn't read the rest. The wedding was a spectacle of gold, silk, and diamonds. Jacqueline smiled in every photo. But behind her eyes was a stillness Jack would never see. Arjun was handsome and charming in public, the kind of man who drew applause just by raising a glass. In private, he was cold, controlling, and quick to anger. He criticized Jacqueline for her voice, her clothes, even the way she poured his tea. "You're my wife," he'd say, swirling his whiskey. "Behave like it." The first time he shoved her, She told herself it was an accident. The first time he struck her, she covered the bruise and said nothing. But the cycle worsened until even her laughter was gone. When she called her father late at night, her voice cracked as she said she was fine. Donald believed she was simply adjusting to married life, until the day he visited unannounced. Jacqueline opened the door slowly, her lips split, a faint bruise shadowing her jaw. "What happened?" Donald asked, his voice trembling. "I fell," she murmured. From inside, Arjun smirked. "She's clumsy, Uncle." It was the casual cruelty in his tone that snapped something in Donald. Within an hour, Jacqueline's bags were packed. He confronted Arjun in a voice like steel. "You'll never see her again." Days later, Donald traveled to a quieter part of the city for business. While walking past a small stationery shop, he stopped. Jack was there. He stood by the shop's entrance, holding the hand of a small boy who laughed up at him. A woman came out of the shop, plainly dressed but glowing with warmth. She handed Jack a bag, and he slipped an arm around her shoulders. They looked at each other with a love that needed no words, no wealth, only presence and care. Donald stood frozen, watching as Jack lifted the boy into his arms. The little family walked away, their laughter trailing into the afternoon air. It hit Donald like a stone in the chest. He had taken that chance from Jacqueline, not because Jack was unworthy, but because he was poor. Because Donald's pride whispered that love was not enough without status. And in chasing a better match, he had thrown his daughter into a life of misery. That night, Donald stood at Jacqueline's door. She was reading by the window, a blanket wrapped around her. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She looked up. "For what? For not letting you choose? For thinking I knew best? For ruining something that might have made you happy?" Jacqueline closed her book and met his gaze. Her eyes tired but calm. "It's in the past now, Papa." Donald nodded, but as he walked away, the sound of Jack's little boy laughing still echoed in his mind. A reminder that some mistakes can never be undone, only carried.